The morning sun rose over New Eden like it had for the past 20 years. Children laughed as they walked to school. Parents waved goodbye from their doorsteps. The air smelled of fresh bread and blooming flowers. Nobody knew this would be the last normal day their world would ever see. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the colony's defense tower, watching the horizon. His coffee was still warm in his hands. The early shift was always quiet. Too quiet some days. But that was good. Quiet meant safe. Quiet meant the children could play without fear. "Captain," his radio crackled. "We have ships coming in from the outer system." Marcus set down his coffee. "How many ships?" 12, sir. "They're big ones?" "Zephyrian design." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The Zephyrians were not friends to humans. They thought humans were just primitive animals who had learned to use tools. They had never attacked a human colony before, but they had never been friendly either. "Are they responding to our calls?" Marcus asked. "No, sir. They're not talking to us at all." Marcus grabbed his weapon and ran down the tower stairs. He had to get to the command center. He had to warn everyone. Something was very wrong. The Zephyrian ships landed in the main square without permission. They were massive gray vessels that blocked out the sun. Steam rose from their landing systems. The ground shook under their weight. Tall, thin aliens stepped out of the ships. They had silver skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were completely black. They moved like they owned the place. Behind them came soldiers carrying energy weapons. "This is Commander Vex of the Zephyrian Empire," a voice boomed across the colony. "We are here for inspection. All humans will submit to questioning." Marcus had reached the command center. He was on the radio to Earth, but the signal was being blocked. The Zephyrians were jamming all communications. The colony was cut off. "Sir," said Lieutenant Torres, "they're setting up checkpoints everywhere. They're stopping people on the streets." Marcus watched the screens showing the colony. Zephyrian soldiers were pushing around human civilians. They were rough and mean. An old man fell down when a soldier shoved him. A woman cried as they searched through her bags. "Why are they doing this?" Torres asked. "I don't know," Marcus said, "but I don't like it." By noon, the situation was getting worse. The Zephyrians were taking people away for questioning. Some came back. Others did not. Families started hiding in their homes. Marcus gathered his small defense force. There were only 50 trained fighters on New Eden. The Zephyrians had brought at least 500 soldiers. "We can't fight them head on," Marcus told his people. "But we can slow them down. Make them work for everything they take." The first real trouble started at the marketplace. A Zephyrian soldier tried to take food from a vendor without paying. When the vendor protested, the soldier hit him with the back of his hand. The human man fell bleeding. Other humans saw this. They got angry. They started surrounding the soldier. More Zephyrians came running. Soon there was a crowd of angry humans facing nervous alien soldiers. "Go back to your homes," Commander Vex ordered through his speakers. "Return to your homes or face consequences." But the humans did not move. They stood their ground. A woman helped the bleeding vendor to his feet. A young man stepped in front of the soldiers. "You cannot treat us like this," the young man said. "This is our home." Commander Vex himself came to the marketplace. He was taller than the other Zephyrians. His silver skin had dark marks on it like scars. His black eyes looked at the humans like they were insects. "Your home?" He laughed. "This world belongs to the Zephyrian Empire now. You are here because we allow it." "That's not true," the young man said. "We have rights." The Galactic Council said. Commander Vex shot him. The energy blast hit the young man in the chest. He fell dead instantly. The crowd screamed. "Rights?" Vex said. You have no rights. You are primitives, animals. You exist because we have not bothered to remove you yet. That's when Marcus attacked. He and his fighters came from 3 directions at once. They used hit and run tactics. Strike fast, then disappear. It was the only way to fight a stronger enemy. The battle lasted 6 hours. Humans used every trick they knew. They knew their colony better than the aliens did. They used underground tunnels and hidden passages. They made every street a trap, but there were too many Zephyrians. They had better weapons. They had armor and shields. Slowly, they pushed the human fighters back. Commander Vex was getting frustrated. His simple inspection had become a war. His soldiers were getting hurt. Some were even dying. These primitive humans were fighting harder than expected. Enough of this, he told his officers. Make an example. Show them the price of resistance. What do you mean, sir? Asked one officer. The school, Vex said, pointing at the building where human children learned. Destroy it. All of it. But sir, there are younglings inside. Human younglings. Exactly. Vex smiled, showing sharp silver teeth. Let the adults know what happens when they defy us. The school was a beautiful building made of local stone. It had big windows and a playground outside. 200 children were inside, learning about math and reading and science. They were between 5 and 15 years old. The teachers had tried to keep the children calm during the fighting. They told them it was just a training exercise. They played quiet games and sang soft songs. The children trusted their teachers to keep them safe. When the Zephyrian soldiers surrounded the school, the teachers finally understood. They tried to call for help. They tried to evacuate the children, but there was nowhere to run. The soldiers had them trapped. The energy cannons fired for 10 minutes. The beautiful school became dust and fire. The children's voices fell silent. When the shooting stopped, nothing moved in the ruins. 200 human children died that day. They died because aliens thought humans needed to learn their place. They died because Commander Vex wanted to make a point about power. Marcus found out an hour later. The radio message came from a survivor, a teacher who had been blown clear of the building. She was dying, but she lived long enough to tell him what happened. Marcus fell to his knees. His weapon clattered to the ground. Around him, other humans were crying. The strongest fighters wept like children themselves. The Zephyrians left New Eden that evening. Their inspection was complete. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they pleased. As their ships lifted off, Commander Vex made one last announcement. Let this be a lesson to all humans. Know your place in the galaxy. Accept what betters decide for you. Your children paid the price for your pride today. Do not make us teach you again. The ships disappeared into space. New Eden was quiet again. But it was not the peaceful quiet of morning. It was the terrible quiet that comes after death. The colonists gathered in the ruins of their school. They held each other and cried. Marcus stood among the broken stones and twisted metal. He held a small shoe that had belonged to one of the children. His hands shook with rage. Somewhere in the distance, someone was starting the emergency transmitter. Earth had to know what happened here. The galaxy had to know that the Zephyrians had murdered human children. What the Zephyrians did not know was that they had just made the worst mistake in the history of their species. The message reached Earth 8 hours later. Admiral Sarah Chen was sleeping in her quarters when the emergency alarm woke her. She had been dreaming of her own daughter, who was now grown up and living on Mars. In her dream, they were having lunch together and laughing about old times. The alarm meant only one thing. Something terrible had happened to human civilians somewhere in the galaxy. Sarah pulled on her uniform and ran to the command center. The night shift was already working hard. Screens showed star maps and communication channels. Everyone looked worried and angry. What happened? Sarah asked. Captain Rodriguez turned to face her. His eyes were red. She had never seen him cry before. New Eden, Admiral. The Zephyrians hit New Eden. Sarah felt ice in her stomach. How many dead? 200 children, ma'am. They bombed the school during class time. Sarah stood very still for a long moment. Around her, the command center was buzzing with activity, but she heard nothing. In her mind, she could see her daughter's face from many years ago. 6 years old, missing her front teeth. Excited about her first day of school. "Show me everything," she said quietly. For the next hour, Sarah watched the reports from New Eden. She saw the video footage that survivors had managed to record. She listened to the last transmission from the teacher who died in the attack. She read Commander Vex's final message about humans knowing their place. When it was over, Sarah stood up. Every person in the command center was watching her. They were waiting to see what humanity's top military leader would do. "Get me President Martinez," she said. "Wake him up. I don't care what time it is." President Martinez appeared on the screen 5 minutes later. He was in his pajamas, but his eyes were alert. Behind him, Sarah could see Secret Service agents who had obviously been woken up too. "I've been reading the reports, Admiral," the president said. "Tell me this isn't real." "It's real, sir. The Zephyrians murdered 200 human children to make a point about power." The president was quiet for a long time. He was looking at something off-screen. Probably his own copy of the reports. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" Sarah had been thinking about this question for the past hour. She knew exactly what she wanted to say. "I recommend we activate Protocol Omega, sir." Everyone in the command center stopped what they were doing. Protocol Omega was the plan nobody wanted to use. It was humanity's total war response. It meant turning the entire human civilization into a war machine. "Are you sure about this, Admiral?" the president asked. "Protocol Omega isn't something we can take back. Once we start, we have to finish." "Sir, they killed our children. They broadcast their mockery to the entire galaxy. If we don't respond with everything we have, every other species will think they can do the same thing." The president nodded slowly. "I'll need to speak with Congress and the Colonial Council. But I think you're right. No one touches our children. No one." The call ended. Sarah turned to address the command center. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for Protocol Omega activation. Contact every human world, every space station, every mining platform. Tell them what happened on New Eden. Tell them that we are going to war." The next few hours changed everything. On Earth, factories that made civilian products started retooling their assembly lines. Car manufacturers began producing military vehicles. Electronics companies started making targeting systems and communication equipment. Every major corporation received orders from the government. Help the war effort or be forced to help. The civilian space fleet was mobilized. Cargo ships, passenger liners, even small private yachts received new orders. Report to the nearest military base for conversion to support roles. Some ships would carry supplies. Others would become medical transports. A few of the fastest ones would become messenger ships. On Mars, the big shipyards started working around the clock. They had been building new passenger ships for the growing colonies. Now they were building warships. The design teams worked without rest, creating new types of vessels that had never been built before. The asteroid mining stations became weapons factories. They had all the raw materials and the industrial equipment. They just needed new programming and human determination. Within hours, they were producing ammunition, armor plating, and ship components. But the most important change was in the people themselves. Sarah watched the reports coming in from across human space. On every world, in every city, humans were volunteering for military service. Old soldiers came out of retirement. Young people left their jobs to join the fight. Parents who had lost children on other worlds 20 years ago were signing up to pilot fighters. The response was bigger than anyone expected. Much bigger. "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez said, "we're getting more volunteers than we can process. The recruitment centers are overflowing." "Good," Sarah said. "We're going to need every single one of them." The news also reached the other alien species in the galaxy. Most of them were horrified by what the Zephyrians had done. Some sent messages of sympathy to human leaders. A few even offered to help, but many aliens were also worried about the human response. They had always seen humans as peaceful traders and explorers. They had never seen humans angry before. The scale of the mobilization was frightening, even to species that were friendly with humanity. The Altarian ambassador called Sarah directly. "Admiral Chan," he said through the translator, "my government wants you to know that we condemn the Zephyrian attack. But we also want to ask you to show restraint in your response." "Restraint?" Sarah repeated. "They murdered our children." "Yes, and that was terrible. But total war will hurt innocent Zephyrians too. Many of them had nothing to do with this attack." Sarah looked at the alien ambassador for a long moment. He was a good person. She had worked with him for years on trade agreements and joint exploration projects. But he did not understand humans at all. "Ambassador, let me explain something about my species. We are normally very peaceful people. We try to solve problems with words instead of weapons. We trade with everyone. We share our technology. We help aliens in need." The ambassador nodded. "Yes, this is why everyone likes working with humans. But there is one thing that will make humans stop being peaceful. One thing that will turn us into something you don't want to see. Touch our children, and we become monsters. Not evil monsters, but monsters nonetheless." "But surely you can be reasonable." "No," Sarah cut him off. "Reason ended when they bombed that school. Now there is only justice. And justice for dead human children means the end of the Zephyrian Empire." The ambassador's face went pale. His species changed color when they were frightened. "Admiral, please reconsider. The galactic community can negotiate." Sarah ended the call. All across human space, the war machine was coming to life. It was bigger and more powerful than Anione had imagined. For centuries, humans had been building industrial capacity for peaceful purposes. Now all of that capacity was being turned toward one goal: the destruction of everyone who would harm human children. By the end of the first day, Sarah had reports from every human world. The response was unanimous. Every government, every corporation, every family was ready to support the war effort. There were no protests, no peace movements, no calls for negotiation. For the first time in human history, the entire species was united with one purpose. Sarah looked out the window of her office. She could see the lights of the shipyards working through the night. Tomorrow, the first strike forces would begin moving toward Zephyrian space. "Ma'am?" Captain Rodriguez appeared in her doorway. "The Zephyrian Empire sent a message. They want to know if we're planning to retaliate for the New Eden incident." Sarah smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Tell them they'll find out soon enough." 6 months had passed since New Eden. The Zephyrian Empire was beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human warship Thunder's Edge. Through the view screen, she could see the Zephyrian supply depot on the asteroid below. It was heavily defended with energy shields and gun platforms. The Zephyrians thought they were safe there. They were wrong. "Are the stealth fields holding?" Elena asked her tactical officer. "Yes, Captain. We're invisible to their sensors. They have no idea we're here." Elena smiled. Human stealth technology had improved dramatically in the past 6 months. The military had taken civilian cloaking devices used for scientific research and made them much better. Now human ships could get very close to Zephyrian targets without being detected. "Begin the attack," Elena ordered. The human ships moved like ghosts. Silent and unseen, they surrounded the depot. When they opened fire, the Zephyrians never knew what hit them. The shields failed instantly. The gun platforms exploded. Within minutes, the entire facility was destroyed, but the humans didn't stop there. As Zephyrian rescue ships arrived, human hackers took control of their communication systems. Every ship received the same message. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. Your empire murdered innocent children on New Eden. Today, we destroyed your supply depot at Kepler 442. Tomorrow we will destroy another target. This will continue until justice is served." Then the human ships disappeared, leaving only wreckage and confusion. This scene played out dozens of times across Zephyrian space. Human strike forces appeared without warning, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Zephyrians were fighting an enemy they couldn't see or catch. Admiral Crox of the Zephyrian military looked at the damage reports on his desk. In 6 months, the humans had destroyed 30 supply depots, 15 communication stations, and 8 military bases. They had done all of this without losing a single ship. "How are they doing this?" he asked his intelligence chief. "We don't know, sir. Our sensors can't detect their ships. Our communication networks are being hacked constantly. They seem to know where our facilities are before we tell them." Admiral Crox was frustrated and scared. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had the best technology and the strongest military. How could primitive humans be defeating them so easily? What Admiral Crox didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for this war for decades. Not openly, but quietly. Human scientists had studied every alien species in the galaxy. They knew Zephyrian technology better than many Zephyrians did. The Zephyrians used quantum communication, networks that they thought were unbreakable. But human mathematicians had found weaknesses in the quantum encryption. Now human hackers could break into any Zephyrian system they wanted. The Zephyrians relied on energy sensors that could detect most spacecraft. But humans had learned to build ships that absorbed energy instead of reflecting it. To Zephyrian sensors, human ships looked like empty space. Most importantly, humans had learned patience. They watched and waited. They studied their enemies for months before attacking. When they finally struck, they knew exactly where to hit for maximum damage. Commander Vex, who had ordered the attack on New Eden, was getting desperate. His forces were being picked apart piece by piece. He couldn't protect his supply lines. His communication network was constantly compromised. His soldiers were afraid to go on patrol. "We need to strike back," he told Admiral Crox. "We need to attack human worlds and show them we're still strong." "With what ships?" Crox replied. "Half our fleet is guarding supply convoys that get attacked anyway. The other half is chasing human raiders that disappear before we can catch them. Then we use everything we have. One massive strike against Earth itself." Admiral Crox thought about this. It was desperate, but it might work. If they could hurt the human homeworld badly enough, maybe the humans would agree to peace talks. "Very well," he said. "Gather every available ship. We'll attack Earth with everything we have left." But the humans were already watching. Human intelligence agents had been monitoring Zephyrian communications for months. They knew about the planned attack on Earth before Admiral Crox had finished giving the orders. Admiral Sarah Chun received the report in her office on Earth. She was looking at pictures of the children who had died on New Eden. She looked at their faces every day to remind herself why this war was necessary. "How many ships are they sending?" she asked Captain Rodriguez. 500, Admiral. Everything they can spare. It's their entire mobile fleet. Sarah nodded. This was exactly what she had been hoping for. For 6 months, the humans had been destroying Zephyrian infrastructure and supply lines. They had weakened the enemy fleet and forced them to spread out across the galaxy, trying to defend everything at one spot. Now the Zephyrians were putting all their remaining strength in one place. That made them vulnerable. Order the third fleet to intercept them at the Vega system, Sarah said, and activate the Luna defense grid. Captain Rodriguez looked surprised. The Luna defense grid? Admiral, that system was designed to stop asteroids, not warships. It was designed to stop asteroids, Sarah agreed. But we made some improvements. The Luna defense grid was a network of powerful mass drivers built on the moon. They were supposed to destroy dangerous asteroids before they could hit Earth. But human engineers had been very busy for the past 6 months. Now the mass drivers could fire metal projectiles at nearly the speed of light. The Zephyrian fleet arrived at Earth 3 days later. Admiral Crox was confident. He had 500 of the best warships in the galaxy. The humans might have better stealth technology, but they couldn't hide an entire planet. Begin the attack, Admiral Crox ordered. Target the major cities first. The Zephyrian ships moved toward Earth in perfect formation, their weapons charged up for the devastating first strike. Admiral Crox was already planning his victory speech. Then the Luna defense grid opened fire. The first projectile hit the lead Zephyrian ship at 90% of light speed. The impact released more energy than a nuclear bomb. The ship simply ceased to exist. It didn't explode or break apart. One moment it was there. The next moment it was a cloud of glowing plasma. More projectiles followed. Each shot destroyed a Zephyrian warship instantly. The aliens tried to dodge, but the projectiles were too fast. They tried to raise shields, but no shield could stop a solid metal bar moving at near light speed. In 10 minutes, 200 Zephyrian ships were destroyed. The survivors tried to retreat, but the human Third Fleet was waiting for them. The human ships had been hiding behind the moon, using Earth's gravity to mask their approach. The battle was over in an hour. Of the 500 ships that had attacked Earth, only 50 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. Admiral Crox's flagship was among the captures. He would face trial for war crimes later, but the defeat at Earth was just the beginning of the Zephyrian collapse. With their mobile fleet destroyed, the Zephyrians couldn't defend their colonies anymore. Human forces spread out across Zephyrian space like a flood. They didn't attack randomly. Every target was chosen carefully. First, they took the agricultural worlds that fed the Zephyrian population. The human attacks were precise. They destroyed the food distribution networks, but left the farms intact. They wanted the Zephyrian people to go hungry, not starve to death. Next, they captured the manufacturing worlds that produced Zephyrian technology. Again, the humans were careful. They targeted the factories that made weapons and military equipment. Hospitals and schools were left untouched. Finally, they isolated the Zephyrian homeworld itself. No ships could get in or out. No messages could be sent to other parts of the Empire. The center of Zephyrian civilization was cut off from everything else. The war was not over yet, but everyone could see how it would end. The Zephyrian Empire was dying. What had taken 1,000 years to build was being destroyed in a matter of months. Other alien species watched in amazement and terror. They had never seen anything like the human war machine. It was precise, efficient, and absolutely merciless. But it was also strangely honorable. The humans followed rules of war that they had made for themselves. They didn't target civilians. They provided medical care to prisoners. They even sent food to Zephyrian worlds that were running out of supplies. The humans were not monsters. They were something far more dangerous. They were good people who had been pushed too far. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on her bridge, looking at the latest reports. Her ship was now part of the fleet blockading the Zephyrian homeworld. In a few days, they would begin the final assault. Any word from the Zephyrian government? She asked. They're still demanding that we surrender, Captain, a communications officer reported. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Even now, facing complete defeat, the Zephyrians still thought they could dictate terms to humanity. Tell them we have a message for them, Elena said. Tell them that the children of New Eden are still waiting for justice. 1 year after the children died on New Eden, the Zephyrian homeworld surrendered. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center of the human flagship Righteous Fury, watching the feeds from the planet below. Zephyrian cities burned in some places, but most were intact. The humans had been very careful about their targets. They destroyed military bases and government buildings, but they left homes and hospitals alone. The Zephyrian High Council is requesting terms for surrender, Captain Rodriguez reported. Tell them the terms are simple, Sarah replied. Complete surrender. War crimes trials for everyone involved in the New Eden massacre. Reparations to the families of the dead children. Sarah had aged 10 years in the past 12 months. Her hair was now completely gray. Her face had new lines from stress and lack of sleep. But her eyes were still fierce with determination. The war had been won, but justice was not yet complete. Admiral, came a voice from across the command center. Intelligence reports that Commander Vex has been found. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Commander Vex was the alien who had ordered the attack on the school. He was the one who had laughed about dead human children. For months, human forces had been hunting him across the galaxy. Where is he? Sarah asked. He's in a bunker complex under the capital city. He has about 50 guards with him. Our ground forces are surrounding the area now. Sarah looked out at the planet below. Somewhere down there was the alien who had started this whole war. The alien who had murdered innocent children to make a point about power. I'm going down there myself, she said. Admiral, that's not safe. Let the ground forces handle this. No, Sarah said firmly. This ends with me. I want to look him in the eyes when he surrenders. 3 hours later, Sarah was standing in the tunnels beneath the Zephyrian capital. Around her, human soldiers moved with quiet efficiency. They knew every corner of the bunker complex. Human intelligence had been mapping these tunnels for months. The final assault was swift and precise. Vex's guards surrendered quickly when they realized they were outnumbered and outgunned. Most of them were young soldiers who had never wanted to fight humans in the first place. Commander Vex himself was found in the deepest part of the bunker. He was sitting at a desk, still wearing his military uniform. His silver skin looked pale and sick. His forearms shook slightly as human soldiers surrounded him. Commander Vex, Sarah said as she entered the room. I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. Vex looked up at her with his black eyes. Even now, even in defeat, he tried to maintain his arrogance. I know who you are, human, he said in accented English. You are the one who destroyed our empire over a few dead younglings. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. Those younglings had names. They had families who loved them. They had dreams for the future that you took away. Vex laughed bitterly. Dreams? They were animals, just like you. We did the galaxy a favor by removing them. For a moment, Sarah almost let her soldiers shoot him right there. It would have been easy. It would have been satisfying. But that was not who humans were, even in war. You're under arrest for war crimes, she said instead. You will stand trial for the murder of 200 innocent children. Trial. Vex sneered. Will it be a human trial? Will you pretend to be fair while you plan my execution? Sarah looked at him for a long moment. This alien still didn't understand humans at all. "It will be a galactic trial," she said. "Representatives from every species will serve as judges. You will have the best legal defense we can provide. You will be treated according to the laws of civilized nations." Vex stared at her in confusion. "You would give me a fair trial? After what I did?" "Yes," Sarah said. "Because that's what separates us from you. We believe in justice, not revenge. Even for monsters like you." The trial of Commander Vex became the most watched event in galactic history. It was held on a neutral space station, with judges from 12 different alien species. The humans provided evidence and witnesses, but they let the galactic community decide the punishment. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings from New Eden showed exactly what had happened. Surviving teachers testified about the attack on the school. Even some Zephyrian soldiers came forward to testify against their former commander. But the most powerful moment came when Sarah herself took the witness stand. "Tell the court about the children who died," the prosecutor asked. Her daughter Sarah had memorized every name, every face, every detail about the 200 victims. She spoke for 3 hours, describing each child's personality and dreams. She talked about Maria Santos, who wanted to be a doctor. She talked about Kevin Chun, who loved to paint pictures of spaceships. She talked about little Amy Park, who was only 5 years old and still learning to read dot by the time Sarah finished. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even some of the alien judges were crying. Commander Vex was found guilty of war crimes and crimes against sentient beings. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment on a prison world where he would spend the rest of his days thinking about what he had done. But the trial was only part of the reckoning. The bigger question was what to do with the Zephyrian Empire itself. Some human leaders wanted to dissolve the empire completely, make it so the Zephyrians could never threaten anyone again. Others wanted to rule the former Zephyrian worlds directly, as punishment for what they had done. But Admiral Sarah Chun had a different idea. She stood before the Galactic Council 6 months after Vex's trial. Representatives from hundreds of species were present, all watching to see what humanity would do with its victory. "The Zephyrian Empire is finished," Sarah began. "Their military is destroyed. Their government has surrendered. Their colonies are under human occupation." She paused, looking around the great hall. "Some of you expect us to exact revenge. Some think we will rule the Zephyrians as they once ruled others. Some believe we will destroy their species entirely." The hall was completely silent. "You are all wrong," Sarah continued. "We did not fight this war for conquest or revenge. We fought for justice. And justice has been served." She activated a holographic display showing the former Zephyrian territories. The Zephyrian worlds will be reorganized into independent systems. Each world will have its own government, chosen by its own people. They will be protected by human forces until they can defend themselves. There were murmurs of surprise throughout the hall. The Zephyrian people will be free to rebuild their civilization. But they will never again be allowed to threaten innocent children. Any world that commits crimes against children of any species will face the full might of humanity. An alien representative stood up. "Admiral Chun, why are you showing mercy to those who showed none to your children?" Sarah looked at the alien with sad eyes. "Because our children would want us to be better than their killers. Because mercy is what makes us human. And because the Zephyrians need to learn that strength comes from protecting the innocent, not harming them." The reorganization of the former Zephyrian Empire took 3 years. Human administrators worked with local populations to establish fair governments. Human engineers helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. Human doctors provided medical care to alien civilians who had been neglected by their own military government. Some Zephyrians were angry about their defeat and occupation. But many others were grateful. Under human administration, they had more freedom and better living conditions than they had enjoyed under their own empire. The former, Commander Vex, watched these developments from his prison cell. He had a small television that showed news from across the galaxy. Every day, he saw reports of Zephyrian worlds prospering under human protection. One day, his human guard brought him a message. It was from a group of Zephyrian children on the world where he used to be stationed. They had written to thank him for starting the war that ended their oppression under the old empire. Vex stared at the message for a long time. The children who had written it were not being sarcastic. They genuinely believed that the destruction of their empire had made their lives better. For the first time since his capture, Commander Vex began to understand what he had really done on New Eden. He had not just murdered human children. He had destroyed his own people's future. That night, he wrote a letter to Admiral Sarah Chun. It was short and simple. I am sorry. I understand now. The children on New Eden deserve to live, just like the children on my world deserve to live. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for what I did, though I know it will never be enough. Sarah read the letter in her office on Earth. She was looking at the same pictures of the dead, children that she looked at every day. She had kept them there to remind herself never to let something like New Eden happen again. She wrote back to Vex. Her letter was even shorter than his. I forgive you, but I will never forget them. The human victory was complete. The Zephyrian Empire was gone. Justice had been served. And the galaxy had learned an important lesson about the price of harming human children. But more importantly, the galaxy had also learned what humans were really like. They were not conquerors or tyrants. They were protectors who would fight to the death for the innocent, but who would show mercy to those who truly repented. It was a lesson that would be remembered for 1,000 years. 5 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy was a very different place now. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the rebuilt school on New Eden, looking out at the memorial garden. 200 small trees grew there, one for each child who had died. Each tree had a plaque with a child's name and picture. The trees were different species from different worlds, representing the diversity of life that humans protected. Today was the 5th anniversary of the attack. Representatives from dozens of alien species had come to New Eden for the memorial service. They came to remember the children, but also to reaffirm their commitment to the new galactic order that had emerged from that terrible day. Sarah walked slowly through the garden, reading the names on the plaques. She knew them all by heart, but she still read them every year. Maria Santos, who had wanted to be a doctor. Kevin Chun, who had loved to paint spaceships. Little Amy Park, who had just learned to write her own name. Admiral? A voice called from behind her. Sarah turned to see Captain Torres, who was now a general. He had gray in his hair too, but his eyes were still sharp and kind. The ceremony is about to begin, he said gently. Sarah nodded and followed him to the main courtyard of the school. Hundreds of people were gathered there. Humans, Zephyrians, Altarians, and many other species stood together. In the front row sat the families of the children who had died. Some of them were crying quietly. Others stood with fierce pride. The new galactic charter was displayed on a large screen behind the speaker's podium. It was a simple document, but it had changed everything. The most important part was Article 1. The children of all sentient species shall be protected from harm. Any individual, organization, or government that deliberately targets children shall be considered an enemy of all civilized peoples and shall face the combined response of the galactic community. Sarah stepped up to the podium to begin the ceremony. The crowd fell silent. 5 years ago, on this very spot, 200 innocent children died. She began. They died because one alien commander believed that power came from causing fear. He was wrong. She looked out at the crowd, seeing faces from species that had once been enemies. True power comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It comes from standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult. It comes from choosing justice over revenge and mercy over hatred. Behind her, the school was beautiful again. It had been rebuilt exactly as it was before, but with better safety systems. Children played in the classrooms where their predecessors had died. Their laughter echoed across the memorial garden. The children who died here did not die in vain, Sarah continued. Their deaths taught the galaxy a lesson that will never be forgotten. Touch our children, touch any species' children, and face the consequences. But also know that we will always choose to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm. In the audience, former Commander Vex listened from his wheelchair. He was very old now, and his silver skin had grown pale with age. He had been released from prison 2 years ago for good behavior and genuine remorse. Now he spent his days working with Zephyrian children who had been orphaned by the war, teaching them about the importance of protecting the innocent. He raised one of his 4 hands when Sarah asked for testimony from those who had learned from the tragedy. I was the one who ordered the attack on this school, he said in a voice that shook with emotion. I thought it would make humans afraid. Instead, it taught me what real strength looks like. He looked around at the mixed crowd of humans and aliens. Real strength is what I see here today. Former enemies working together. Children of all species playing together. A galaxy that has learned to protect its most vulnerable members. I spent my whole life believing that fear made people obey. But love makes them loyal. Respect makes them allies. Protecting their children makes them family. The old Zephyrian sat back down to respectful applause. Many in the crowd remembered when he was the most hated being in the galaxy. Now he was seen as an example of how even the worst people could change and grow. Sarah looked out at the crowd and thought about how much had changed. The former Zephyrian worlds were now peaceful and prosperous. Each planet governed itself, but all were protected by human defense forces. Crime rates had dropped dramatically. Education and healthcare had improved. Most importantly, children of all species were safer than they had ever been. The change wasn't limited to former Zephyrian space. Across the galaxy, other governments had reformed their laws to better protect children. The Altarian Republic had created new schools for orphaned children. The Centaurian Empire had banned child labor in their mining colonies. Even the distant Orion Federation had established child welfare agencies on their frontier worlds. The memorial garden behind me will stand forever, Sarah said. But it is not the only memorial to these children. Every safe school in the galaxy is a memorial. Every child protection law is a memorial. Every time an adult chooses to help a child instead of hurt them, that is a memorial. She paused, thinking of her own daughter, now a teacher on Mars. We cannot bring back the children we lost, but we can make sure their deaths meant something. We can build a galaxy where all children are protected, valued, and loved. The ceremony continued with speeches from other leaders. The Altarian ambassador spoke about the new child protection treaties. A Zephyrian educator talked about the schools that had been built on the former Empire worlds. A human parent whose son had died on New Eden spoke about forgiveness and healing. But the most powerful moment came when the current students of New Eden School performed the song they had written for the memorial. It was sung in a dozen different languages, by children of many different species. The words were simple but moving. We remember you, little friends we never met. We play where you once played. We learned where you once learned. We promise to be kind, the way you would have been. We promise to protect each other, the way adults protect us. As the song ended, Sarah looked around at the faces in the crowd. She saw former enemies standing side by side. She saw children of different species holding hands. She saw a galaxy that had learned to be better than it was. After the formal ceremony, people stayed to visit the memorial garden. Sarah walked among them, listening to conversations in dozens of different languages. A Zephyrian grandmother was teaching human children about the plants from her homeworld. A group of young aliens were planning a joint science project for their schools. Veterans from both sides of the war were sharing stories and healing old wounds as the day wore on. Most of the visitors left to return to their homes and their lives. But Sarah remained in the garden, sitting on a bench beside the tree that had been planted for Amy Park. The 5-year-old, who had just learned to write her name, General Torres, found her there as the sun was setting. "Still thinking about them?" he asked as he sat down beside her. "Every day," Sarah replied. "I think about who they would have become, what they would have contributed to the galaxy, the children they might have had themselves. Do you think we did the right thing? The war, I mean." Sarah considered the question carefully. It was one she asked herself often. "The war itself was terrible," she said finally. "Wars always are. But what came after? The changes we made, the children we protected, the peace we built. Yes, I think it was right. Those children didn't die for nothing. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars come out in the darkening sky. Ships from many different worlds moved across the heavens, carrying people and goods in peaceful trade. Admiral," Torres said eventually, "there's something I need to tell you. The Galactic Council has made a decision about the memorial here on New Eden." Sarah looked at him curiously. "They want to make this place a protected site. Not just the garden, but the whole planet. New Eden will become the galaxy center for child protection. Schools from every world will send students here to learn about protecting the innocent. It will be a living memorial that teaches future generations." Sarah smiled for the first time that day. It was a real smile, full of hope and satisfaction. "The children would like that," she said. "They always love learning." As full darkness fell, lights came on throughout the memorial garden. Each tree was softly illuminated, making the names on the plaques glow gently in the night. Sarah stood up from the bench and placed her hand on Amy Park's tree. "Thank you," she whispered to the small girl who had died 5 years ago. "Thank you for teaching us what really matters." The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts and problems and injustices. But it was better than it had been. Children were safer. Laws were more just. Different species worked together instead of fighting each other. And on a small world called New Eden, 200 trees grew tall and strong in a garden where children had once died. Their roots ran deep, just like the lesson they represented. As long as those trees stood, as long as their story was remembered, the galaxy would know the price of harming the innocent dot. It would also know the power of those who stood up to protect them. Sarah walked slowly back to her ship, leaving the memorial garden to its peaceful night. Tomorrow she would return to her duties as humanity's protector. But tonight, she was content knowing that the children's sacrifice had not been forgotten, and that their deaths had bought a better